My wife and I sit here today, as we have many other days, wondering what our beautiful son.
It was because I was weak. It was because I was stupid. It was because I was jealous.
To such an amazing person. From the moment that the news became public, all we have heard is outpouring of sentiments, echoing the facts that we knew to be true.
Mr. Blaine, look at me when I'm talking to you, sir. Okay, you spent the entire sentencing staring over there in this corner.
For most teens, life is just beginning, filled with dreams, friendships, and a future waiting to unfold. But for some, one horrific decision changes everything. Instead of planning for college, they find themselves in a courtroom, facing the harshest punishment imaginable. From Matthew's chilling final act to Colt's shocking case, each story reveals the dark twists that led to their ultimate fate. Let's begin.
As I approached, I got closer. I saw her really sniffing at a particular area. So I pulled her back, and when I looked...
On a cold November day in 2016, a tragedy unfolded in Lawrence, Massachusetts. 16-year-old Lee Manuel Villoria Paulino, a bright and kind-hearted teenager, suddenly vanished. His family, worried and desperate, searched for him everywhere, hoping he would return home safely. But weeks later, their worst nightmare became a reality when a horrifying discovery was made along the banks of the Merrimack River. Lee's disappearance left his family and community in shock. He was a responsible teenager with no history of running away. As days passed, concern grew and the search intensified. Then a dog walker stumbled upon something horrifying. A body was discovered near the riverbank, and investigators later confirmed the remains belonged to Lee, and his head was found nearby.
These images showing the two leaving Paulino's Lawrence home in November of 2016.
Detectives immediately launched a full-scale investigation. As they retraced Lee's last steps, they discovered he was last seen with one of his classmates, 15-year-old Matthew Borges. At first, Borges pretended to know nothing, but the evidence told a different story.
And the bottom half was actually still submerged in the water. And upon still inspecting it, we couldn't locate any hands to the body as well.
Police uncovered disturbing text messages and witness statements that revealed Borges had been consumed by jealousy. He believed that Lee had been spending time with a girl he liked. That suspicion turned into deadly rage. Investigators found that Borges had lured Lee to the riverbank under the guise of hanging out. But instead of a friendly conversation, Borges committed a horrifying act that left even the most experienced detectives stunned. When Borges was arrested, he showed no emotion. He remained cold and detached as the gruesome details of his crime were revealed. In court, prosecutors described his actions as calculated and ruthless. Witnesses testified that Borges had talked about wanting to kill someone days before Lee lost his life. The jury listened in horror as the prosecution laid out the gruesome evidence, painting a picture of a young man who was killed without remorse.
Amount of evidence that isn't subject to interpretation. It's evidence that points to one person and one person only, him, because he's the one who did it.
Fueled by jealousy and obsession, Borges committed an unthinkable act driven by possessiveness and a lack of empathy. In May 2019, a jury found Matthew Borges guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced him to life imprisonment with the eligibility of parole after 30 years. He remained motionless while the verdict was read. Because he was a juvenile at the time of the crime, Massachusetts law required that he be given a chance at parole.
Is the defendant guilty or not guilty? And if guilty, guilty of what and on what theory?
We find the defendant guilty.
During sentencing, Lee's mother, Katiuska Paulino, stood before the court, her voice filled with grief. She described her son as the soul of this family and pleaded with the judge to ensure Borges never had the chance to hurt another person. Superior Court Judge Helene Kasajian handed down the maximum sentence allowed: life in prison with the eligibility of parole after 30 years. His attorney later stated they plan to appeal. If the conviction is upheld, Borges won't be eligible for parole until he's in his 40s.
Yes, and I mean, I remember it like it was yesterday. He would do this motion with his hand, and he would say, "Oh, it smells so good in here."
Lee Manuel Villoria Paulino's tragic death shattered his community, leaving a grieving family forever changed. Though justice was served, no sentence can bring him back. His memory remains a painful reminder of how lives can be destroyed in an instant. Our next case is about a senseless act of horror, where two teenagers turned on their roommate over a petty argument.
Adam believed in treating others with kindness, compassion, and generosity without judgment.
The quiet Michigan neighborhood had no idea what kind of horror had unfolded inside one of its homes. On the night of May 2nd, 2023, 44-year-old Adam Reynolds was trapped in his own home, facing a gruesome fate he never saw coming. He wasn't attacked by strangers or enemies. His killers were the very people he had shared a roof with. Blaine and Reynolds had been living with Adam Reynolds when a simple household dispute took a tragic turn. On May 2nd, 2023, Adam wanted to discuss house rules, but his younger roommates refused to listen, leading to an unfortunate and shocking outcome. Equipped with harmful objects, the two teenagers confronted Adam, leading to a tragic outcome. By the end, Adam Reynolds had lost his life, and his roommates faced the consequences of their irreversible actions. When authorities arrived, they found evidence that pointed directly to Blaine and Reynolds. Blood samples, forensic analysis, and witness statements all confirmed what had happened. The two suspects were arrested and charged with second-degree murder, armed robbery, and other offenses. As the case progressed, Blaine and Reynolds accepted a plea deal, avoiding trial and harsher penalties. During sentencing, Judge LaChana made it clear he did not believe the punishment matched the crime.
I don't think there's a number, quite frankly, that is high enough for the evil that you subjected this gentleman.
I honestly don't know if there's a number that represents enough time for what you two did, he said. He then turned to Blaine, calling him out in front of the entire courtroom. Mr. Blaine, look at me when I'm talking to you, sir. Blaine had spent the sentencing staring at the floor, avoiding eye contact with the grieving family. The judge demanded he face the people whose lives he had shattered.
This is the moment two paranoid teenagers appeared in court after killing their roommate because they thought he was trying to poison them.
The reason for the attack was a disagreement over house rules. Blaine and Reynolds didn't like that Adam was trying to set boundaries in the home they shared. Instead of resolving their differences peacefully, they made a devastating choice. Despite Judge LaChana's clear frustration, the plea deal stood.
A minimum term of 20 years, a maximum term of 100, credit for 291 days, and she has served. On count 3 on robbery, the minimum term is 20 years, the maximum is 100 years.
Both Jacob Blaine and Willow Reynolds were sentenced to 20 to 100 years in prison, with credit for 291 days served, plus restitution. However, both showed no guilt for their act. This case is heartbreaking. A man lost his life over something so minor, and two young people threw away their futures with a senseless act of violence. Judge LaChana's words reflect what many feel. No amount of prison time can undo what happened. Our next case is a chilling school incident where a teenager entered his classroom with deadly intent, leaving a community shattered.
All of you are good people, and hell is knowing that you have done something to good people, and that you can never make it right.
On February 2nd, 1996, students at Frontier Middle School in Moses Lake, Washington, were going about their normal school day when a tragic event unfolded. 14-year-old Barry Lukaitis entered his algebra classroom, causing harm to his teacher and classmates. The ordeal ended when a courageous teacher stepped in, preventing further tragedy. Barry came from a difficult home environment. His parents were going through a tough divorce, and his mother, Joanne Phillips, was struggling with deep sadness. She even shared troubling thoughts with Barry, but he encouraged her to reconsider. However, he was also facing serious personal struggles of his own. On the day of the incident, Barry dressed in old Western-style attire and brought multiple weapons, including a hunting rifle and 2 handguns. As he entered his algebra classroom during 5th period, he revealed his weapons and initiated his planned actions. Barry first targeted his classmates, killing 14-year-olds Arnold Fritz and Manuel Vela Jr., before turning the gun on 13-year-old Natalie Hintz, who was critically wounded. He then shot and killed his algebra teacher, Leona Caras. After the initial attack, Barry held the remaining students hostage, intending to use one as a shield to escape the school. Hearing the gunfire, teacher and coach John Lane rushed to the scene. He entered the classroom and saw Barry holding the rifle, keeping his classmates trapped. Thinking quickly, Lane offered himself as a hostage. When Barry was distracted, Lane grabbed the gun, wrestled Barry to the ground, and held him down until the police arrived. Barry's arrest shook the small town. As investigators examined the scene, they found evidence of what had happened, including rifle casings on the classroom floor. It soon became clear that Barry had been planning this tragic event for some time.
And that impacted a community, impacted juveniles at the time. And it's not just Mr. Lukaitis that was a juvenile at the time of this crime.
Psychologists who examined Barry discovered that he had clinical depression and bipolar disorder. His defense team argued that he was not in control of his actions and that his violent outburst was influenced by movies, books, and music. The prosecution, however, pointed out that Barry had carefully planned the attack, even modeling his actions after the novel Rage by Stephen King, which tells the story of a student who takes his class hostage after killing his teacher. During the trial, Barry claimed that he had only intended to kill Manuel Vela and that the other deaths were accidental. However, prosecutors believed he wanted to take revenge on those he thought had wronged him. They also argued that his fascination with aggressive media played a role in shaping his actions. In 1997, Barry was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of second-degree murder, 1 count of attempted murder, and 16 counts of aggravated kidnapping. He was sentenced to 2 life terms plus 205 years in prison without the eligibility of parole. However, in 2012, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that juveniles could not automatically be sentenced to life without parole. This led to Barry's resentencing in 2017. For the first time, he lowered his head and sat expressionless, showing no reaction to his actions.
And rocked the small town of Moses Lake. To this day, people there remember 14-year-olds Arnie Fritz and Manuel Vela and beloved math teacher Leona Kairos. In 1997, Garth Dano was on the other side of the courtroom. He actually defended Lukaitis at trial.
He wrote a letter of apology to the court. Despite this, the judge sentenced him to 189 years in prison, ensuring that he would remain behind bars for life.
But he didn't take their impact on our lives from us. And Arnie lives on in us. He lives on in his niece and his nephews. And I'm sure that the Velas and the Kairases will say the same thing.
The tragedy at Frontier Middle School left deep scars on the community. Families of the victims were devastated, and survivors struggled to cope with the trauma. Many questioned whether the signs of Barry's mental health struggles had been ignored.
The shooting was the first mass school shooting in Washington and rocked the small town of Moses Lake. To this day, people there remember 14-year-olds Arnie Fritz and Manuel Vela and beloved math teacher Leona Kairos.
While Barry's troubled past may explain his actions, it does not justify them. His case serves as a stark reminder of how unchecked mental health issues, exposure to harm, and personal struggles can have deadly consequences. Our next case is about reckless destruction, where one teenager's careless decision behind the wheel ended an innocent life.
I was driving on the highway and crashed into another vehicle. And you agree that resulted in the death of Ms. Bailey? Yes, Your Honor.
It was a cold night on February 24th, 2017, and the highway was quiet. Just another stretch of endless gravel under the glow of streetlights. But in the blink of an eye, everything changed. A car came flying down I-25, tearing through the darkness at 110 miles per hour. Behind the wheel was 18-year-old Luke Griffin, whose level is 3 times more than the legal limit. He was reckless, out of control, and completely unaware that his actions would destroy lives. In an instant, the crash changed everything. Karina lost her life, and 2 others were left badly injured. For Karina's daughter, Kimberly Akuda, the pain was unbearable. "He took away my mother. She was everything to me," she said, struggling to hold back tears. But the heartache didn't stop there. Despite causing a deadly crash, Griffin was released on bond while awaiting trial. He was given a chance to prove he could follow the rules. Instead, he showed a complete disregard for them. As part of his release conditions, Griffin was required to stay sober. However, court documents revealed that he repeatedly failed substance tests, twice in July and again in November. When questioned, he admitted to using it once. But for the second incident, he gave an unexpected excuse, claiming he tested positive due to close contact with his girlfriend, who had been using restricted substances. Kimberly wasn't buying it. "I don't believe it at all. After he's already tested positive before, how can anyone believe him now?" she said. Griffin's repeated violations finally caught up with him. After ignoring the conditions of his release, a warrant was issued for his arrest. This time, he was taken back into custody. But for Karina's family, the damage was already done.
He can, with the GPS bracelet, that's not a problem. They can track his whereabouts. Also, we'll have the sober link to ensure sobriety.
Unlike some cases where a crime is planned, this tragedy was the result of reckless behavior. Griffin's decision to operate a vehicle under the influence at extreme speeds showed a disregard for safety. Even after the crash, his actions reflected a lack of responsibility. Kimberly and her family now wait for the justice system to hold Griffin accountable. But one thing is clear: she doesn't believe he deserves another chance. "When you take a life, you should feel the weight of what you've done," she said. Instead, he's out here making excuses, breaking the rules, and proving he doesn't deserve any freedom. He was charged with up to 21 years, but finally, in December 2017, Luke was sentenced to 9 years and 122 days in prison. However, he sat emotionless.
That was reduced to just 9 years. Barbara Romo, deputy DA for Sandoval County, says since New Mexico doesn't have mandatory time for vehicular homicide.
But soon after, he realized his mistake and apologized to the victim's family for his actions. He said, "I am extremely sorry for my actions. There are no words I could say that could bring anyone back or ease the pain.
I am extremely sorry for my actions. There's no words that I can say that will bring anyone back or will ease the pain."
A mother was taken away too soon. A daughter is left grieving. And a young man, given multiple chances, continues to show no sign of change. Now, as Griffin awaits trial, one question remains: will he finally face the consequences of his deadly choices? Our next case is about a horrifying school massacre, where multiple warning signs were ignored, leading to a tragedy that could have been prevented.
They made a threat to shoot up a school.
For real?
Yes, sir. And your name was associated with that address. So we went over to that address, and you weren't living there, so now we live here.
On the morning of September 4th, 2024, Appalachia High School in Barrow County, Georgia, became the site of a devastating tragedy. Students and teachers were going about their day when at 10:20 a.m., gunshots echoed through the halls. Chaos erupted as students ran for their lives. When the gunfire stopped, 4 innocent people, 2 teachers and 2 students, had been killed and at least 9 others were injured. The shooter? A 14-year-old student named Colt Gray. Gray, a freshman at the school, entered the building with harmful intent. His actions were sudden and tragic. However, unlike many similar cases, Gray did not resist when law enforcement arrived. Instead, he put down his weapon and surrendered peacefully. As police took him into custody, one major question remained unanswered: why did he do it? Investigators immediately began searching for a motive. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation, or GBI, worked alongside federal and local law enforcement agencies to piece together what led to this horrifying event. Surprisingly, it was soon revealed that Colt Gray had been on the FBI's radar for over a year. In a joint statement, the FBI and the Jackson County Sheriff's Office disclosed that Gray had posted alarming threats online 16 months before the incident. His messages, shared on a gaming website, included images of firearms and a vague but chilling promise to attack a school. Concerned individuals reported these threats, prompting an FBI investigation. Colt's father, Colin Gray, also faced legal scrutiny due to his alleged involvement in the events leading up to the incident. He was charged with multiple offenses, including 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter and 2 counts of second-degree murder. These charges stemmed from allegations that Colin purchased a rifle as a Christmas gift for his son, despite being aware of Colt's previous threats and mental health concerns.
Used in the shooting. Well, in a new petition, Colin Gray's attorneys are requesting his release from jail, saying his lack of bond violates his constitutional rights.
Agents quickly traced the post back to Georgia and alerted local authorities. Gray was brought in for questioning alongside his father. His father admitted to owning hunting rifles, but assured officers that his son did not have unsupervised access to them. When confronted, Gray denied making the threats. Despite the warning signs, law enforcement determined there was not enough evidence to justify an arrest or further action. Schools were advised to monitor him, but nothing more was done. Now, in the aftermath of the attack, these past warnings feel like missed opportunities. 4 lives have been lost. 9 others are injured. A community is shattered. And the haunting question lingers: could this tragedy have been prevented? Even after questioning Gray, investigators have not determined a clear motive for the attack. He did not target specific individuals, nor did he leave behind any notes or messages explaining his actions. Some speculate that bullying, mental health struggles, or a desire for notoriety may have played a role. But at this point, nothing has been confirmed. Gray has been charged as an adult and remains in custody at the Gainesville Regional Youth Detention Center. He faces multiple counts of murder and other serious charges. If convicted, he will likely spend the rest of his life behind bars.
With
4 counts of felony murder, as outlined in the state warrants that have been issued against you.
The FBI and local law enforcement are now reviewing their past handling of the case, trying to understand if more could have been done to intervene before the tragedy unfolded. Families of the victims are grieving, their lives forever changed. Parents who once felt their children were safe at school now live with a deep sense of fear and uncertainty. The entire Barrow County community is in mourning, grappling with the devastating reality of what has happened. The Appalachia High School case is yet another tragic reminder that warning signs should never be ignored, and that sometimes those warnings come too late. Up next is Reginald Lofton, a teenager whose involvement in a shocking crime raised troubling questions about youth and accountability.
We, the jury, find the defendant in the 2nd count, felony murder, guilty. We, the jury, find the defendant in the 3rd count, felony murder, guilty.
On March 1, 2016, 28-year-old Shane Varnador, hardworking and kind, did his usual night shift delivering pizzas for Papa John's, dreaming of designing video games. But that night, he never made it home. Authorities later uncovered that Shane was lured to an apartment complex in Gwinnett County, Georgia, by 2 teens, Reginald Lofton and Jermaine Young, who intended to rob him. Upon Shane's arrival, he was shot and killed. Police couldn't determine which of the teens pulled the trigger, but under Georgia law, aid in a crime resulting in death holds equal responsibility with the shooter. At 14, Lofton played a crucial role by providing the phone used for the fake order. After Shane was killed, Lofton took the pizza back to his apartment as if nothing had happened.
During the lick, the pizza man flinched on him and the gun went off and he shot him.
Yes. And I said, Reginald, did you hear that gunshot? He said, no. I had my headphones on.
Lofton was arrested and tried for Shane's murder. The courtroom was filled with emotion as the prosecution narrated how a man's life was taken over something as trivial as a pizza. Shane's family members shared their pain. His mother was too emotional to read her statement. His sister described how her young daughter didn't understand death, asking repeatedly when she would see her uncle again. The judge showed no sympathy for Lofton and before sentencing stated, "I wish I could give you more time than I can because I consider you a cold-blooded killer. I hope you never leave prison." But because of a recent U.S. Supreme Court ruling, minors convicted of murder couldn't be sentenced to life without parole. It was considered cruel and unusual punishment. Lofton was given life in prison with the possibility of parole. He would have to serve 30 years before becoming eligible, meaning he wouldn't even have a chance at release until he was 45 years old. As the verdict was read, tears streamed from the defendant's eyes.
Now, a teen that young, 14 at the time of the crime, to be sentenced to life without parole.
Before sentencing, Lofton's sister pleaded for clemency, saying, "Instead of throwing him under the jail cell, give him a second chance."
That my brother do deserve a second chance at life, instead of throwing him under the jail cell.
Lofton faced numerous struggles growing up. After losing his mother, his father was deemed unfit to care for him, leaving him under his sister's care. He had already encountered legal troubles and experienced too much violence for his young age. When it was his turn to speak, Lofton initially refused. However, before the judge made the final decision, he hesitantly said, "I just want to say I'm sorry for your loss, but I did not kill your son. I wasn't the shooter. That's it, Judge." Regardless of whether Lofton pulled the trigger, the fact remained. Shane Varnador was gone. A hardworking man, a loving son, and a devoted brother had lost his life over something senseless. His family was left with heartbreak that would never fully heal.
And I can't imagine what my life's going to be like. I'm sorry.
Lofton was given a second chance with parole in his sentence, yet Shane never had that opportunity. His family continues to grieve a life that could have been, all because of a single pizza delivery call that went terribly wrong. A young man lost his life over a pizza delivery. The next case shows how a trip to the mall turned into a nightmare when a petty argument spiraled into deadly violence.
I know and understand what I did was wrong. I accept full responsibility for my actions. I was saying I'm sorry, but saying I'm sorry is not only what I've done.
Just 2 days before Christmas in 2022, a time when families are engrossed in holiday preparations, a tragic event left one family forever altered. That evening, inside the Nordstrom store at the Mall of America, 19-year-old John Tay Hudson lost his life in an act of cruel violence. An argument erupted between two groups of young men within the mall, quickly escalating into deadly violence. During the fight, Jonte was tackled to the ground. At that moment, 19-year-old Tayshawn Adams Wright and his accomplice, Lavon Longstreet, drew firearms and shot Jonte multiple times at point-blank range. A woman shopping with her daughter also sustained injuries from a stray bullet, causing the mall to go into lockdown as shoppers fled in terror. Upon officers' arrival, Jonte was found with fatal gunshot wounds on the floor. Despite attempts to save him, he did not survive. Surveillance footage led investigators to identify the suspects. Following an intense manhunt, Adams Wright and Longstreet were arrested, each charged with second-degree murder and second-degree assault. Months passed until Adams Wright surprised everyone in court by openly admitting to killing Jonte. When questioned by his lawyer on the circumstances of the shooting, he responded, yes, but afterward expressed remorse for his actions.
I want to apologize for bringing pain and suffering to the victim family. Also to the lady who got shot.
Subsequently, the judge sentenced Adams Wright to 30 years in prison. Longstreet's trial is still pending, though he faces a similar outcome.
My head around this, no one who hasn't gone through what you're going through can. It's 30 years and 7 months. No.
For Jonte's mother, Lynn, no sentence could ever bring her son back. She expressed her heartbreak, saying, his parents will still have him. They can visit him, write to him, talk to him. But my son is gone forever. Her sister also mentioned in an interview, everybody loves him. He was a people person. She described Jonte as a loving and vibrant young man whose life was stolen far too soon.
He was funny, sometimes quiet. Like everybody loved him. He was a people person. Bullet wound or something. I didn't think that nothing too serious about it.
An innocent mall visit ended in tragedy, altering a family's destiny. The senseless act of violence taking Jonte's life inflicted a deep wound on his family and their surrounding community. Although seeking justice, Jonte's mother knows that no verdict will suffice in replacing her son. Jonte's murder was a brutal act of senseless violence. The next case shows how a young mind can commit a horrific act.
You are charged with 1 count of manslaughter. It is a second-degree felony. It is punishable by up to 15 years Florida State Prison. Do you understand that?
On May 23, 2024, in Lauderdale Lakes, Florida, the shocking crime committed by 14-year-old Sofia Koval left a family and community reeling. After the beating death of her 79-year-old grandmother, Maria Koval, everyone struggled to comprehend how such horror emerged within a family. The day of Maria's tragic death, an emergency call led authorities to the Koval residence, where they discovered Maria unresponsive, with no hope of revival. Their investigation soon concluded that the perpetrator was her own granddaughter, Sofia. Family members struggled to understand how Sofia, once the bright and gentle girl of their family, could have done this. At just 14 years old, Sofia was taken into custody and placed in juvenile detention. At first, it seemed like her case would be handled in the juvenile system, but prosecutors soon had a different plan. On October 1st, prosecutors made a bold decision. Sofia would be charged as an adult with manslaughter. She was transferred from juvenile detention to the Broward County Jail and placed in protective custody. The courtroom was tense as a judge ruled that there was enough evidence to proceed with the case. Sofia prays that the decision will be in her favor, but the charge of manslaughter carries serious consequences.
14-year-old Sofia Koval openly prayed in court as she waited for her case to be called.
If convicted as an adult, Sofia could face up to 15 years in prison. There was also another complication. Sofia was not a U.S. citizen. If convicted, she could face deportation after serving her sentence. A Broward State Attorney, Harold F. Pryor, and a team of senior prosecutors carefully reviewed the case. However, because of her young age, there was a possibility that she could be sentenced under juvenile sanctions. In that case, she would serve a maximum of 3 years in detention and could be supervised until she turned 21.
On May 23, 2024, Sofia Koval did beat Yevgenia Koval about her head and body, resulting in multiple injuries. And during that beating episode,
after considering all the facts and evidence, they decided that the adult court was the right place for Sofia's trial. Because of the heinous nature of the crime, and after considering everything presented by the defense so far, I believe it is appropriate that this case should be handled in adult court, Pryor stated. While prosecutors wanted justice for Maria Koval, They also acknowledged that Sophia was still a child. They promised to work with her attorneys to find a resolution that balanced accountability with understanding her age and circumstances.
She is seen praying and crossing herself during that hearing. And her case was back in court today as the state is weighing whether to charge her as an adult.
The case left a family shattered. A grandmother lost her life, and a teenage girl now faced the consequences of a terrible act. The community struggled to understand how such violence could happen between loved ones. Judge Elizabeth Scherer also said it's a difficult decision.
Hold a 14-year-old in secure detention is very, very difficult under the law. Even when juveniles commit, first-degree felonies, robbery, kidnapping.
Sophia's case shows that even family ties can be broken by violence. However, the next case reveals a sinister plot that would take the life of a promising college student.
These are 14 and a 13-year-old boy. We should all remember that.
Family, including Tessa Major's father, silently left court.
On a cold evening in December 2019, Tessa Majors, an 18-year-old Barnard College freshman, strolled near Morningside Park, Manhattan, harboring dreams and ambition. With life and opportunity in her hands, the few minutes ahead would, unfortunately, see them extinguished. Shortly before 7 p.m. on December 11th, 3 teenagers came into the park with one intention: to rob someone. Past deeds lay behind, but tonight, everything would change. They observed Tessa engrossed in her phone, making her their target. As Rashawn Weaver seized her from behind, Luciano Lewis restrained her, searching her pockets. But Tessa wasn't going to give up easily. She fought back, even biting one of the attackers on the finger. That's when everything changed. Enraged, Weaver pulled out a knife and stabbed Tessa multiple times. One of the wounds pierced her heart. Even after being attacked, Tessa struggled to get away. She managed to climb up a flight of stairs near the park entrance, desperately trying to find help. At the top of the stairs, a security guard found her collapsed and bleeding. She was rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. Tessa Majors was gone. The very next day, police arrested a 13-year-old boy who matched the description of one of the attackers. He was wearing clothes and sneakers similar to those seen in surveillance footage. During questioning, he confessed that he and his friends had planned the robbery, but claimed he wasn't the one who stabbed Tessa. As police continued their investigation, they struggled to find the other suspects. One of them, Rashawn Weaver, had gone into hiding, with family members reportedly helping him avoid arrest. It took 2 weeks before the police finally caught him.
The other 2 suspects will be tried in adult court. Their trials on murder and robbery charges are pending.
Once all 3 suspects were in custody, the full details of the crime came to light. Prosecutors revealed that the attack wasn't just a random robbery gone wrong. It was intentional, cruel, and premeditated. The youngest of the attackers, who was just 13 at the time, pleaded guilty to first-degree robbery. Because of his age, he was sentenced to only 18 months in a juvenile detention center.
Anything you want to say on behalf of your son? Weaver's mother had no comments about her son, turning her head away. Neither did Lewis's parents.
Luciano Lewis, who helped restrain Tessa, pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and first-degree robbery. He was sentenced to 9 years to life in prison, yet he shows no remorse for his actions.
The student was stabbed to death, was sentenced today, 9 years to life in prison.
He was one of 3 middle school students.
The final suspect, Rashawn Weaver, the one who held the knife, admitted to stabbing Tessa. He pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 14 years to life in prison. The tragic murder of Tessa Majors shook the entire city. She was young, talented, and full of life. Her family and friends were devastated, left to grieve a life taken too soon. While her killers were caught and sentenced, no punishment could ever bring Tessa back. It was a heartbreaking reminder of how senseless violence can destroy lives. Tessa Majors' potential, curtailed by unforgiving fate, demanded her aspirations fall silent. Her profile symbolized stolen chance, submerged beneath malevolence, an unresolved tragedy, preserving undue loss. Tessa's case shows how teens had planned their crime from the very start. The next case shows how manipulation can lead to devastating consequences.
Did you hear something?
Yes, he was screaming bloody murder.
Okay. And was he actually saying the words bloody murder, or are you just using that as a phrase?
I was just using that as a...
On a quiet night in 2014, the Sikorsky family in Plymouth Township, Michigan, faced a nightmare they could never have imagined. Their adopted daughter, 15-year-old Roxana Sikorsky, had been plotting something unthinkable. An attack on her family. Roxana wasn't acting alone. Her then-boyfriend, Michael Rivera, who was older than her, had been guiding her every move from outside the house. He sent her messages, giving her step-by-step instructions. That night, with a knife in hand, Roxana entered her 12-year-old brother's room and stabbed him. She then attempted to attack her younger sister before fleeing the house and running away with Rivera. Thankfully, her brother survived, and authorities quickly apprehended Roxana and Rivera. Upon investigation, it was discovered that Roxana and Rivera intended to kill her family and escape together. Investigations revealed that Rivera had been directing Sikorsky through text messages, providing explicit instructions and even anatomical diagrams to ensure the lethality of the attacks. As the case went to court, Roxana pleaded guilty to assault with intent to murder. The trial was heartbreaking for her family, particularly her adoptive mother, Laureen Sikorsky. Instead of anger, Laureen begged for mercy, believing Roxana had been manipulated by Rivera into making terrible choices.
Roxy was misled and used by an older adult. However, nothing will benefit this child by sending her to jail.
She said in court, she will miss her high school prom, her graduation, her friends, and her family. She is in desperate need of continued psychological help.
Roxana is now 17 years old. She will miss her high school prom, her graduation, her friends, and her family. She is in desperate need of continued psychological help.
Roxana also spoke in court, expressing deep regret for her actions. She apologized to her family, saying she was sorry for not being the daughter they had hoped for, and promised to work on becoming a better person.
I would like to apologize to my family for not being the daughter they wished I would be. I promise that I will get better, no matter what happens.
Despite her mother's plea, the judge sentenced Roxana to 10 to 20 years in prison. She received credit for the 528 days she had already spent in custody and would undergo extensive psychiatric treatment while serving her time. Meanwhile, Michael Rivera, the man responsible for influencing Roxana's actions, was sentenced to life in prison for his role in the attack. The case left the Sikorsky family shattered. A mother lost the daughter she had adopted and loved, while two siblings had to recover from both psychological and emotional wounds. While Roxana's mother holds hope for her daughter's future, the scars of that night remain.
It is perfect. She has psychological damage from the orphanage in Poland and then her biological family. She was a good student, good girl, good friends. It's just a confluence of all bad events.
Some crimes are driven by anger, greed, or hatred. However, in this case, it was the influence of an older boyfriend and a young girl's misguided choices that led to a horrific nightmare. These teenage killers thought they could escape justice, but the courtroom had other plans. Their haunting reactions revealed the moment they realized they would never be free again. But there's more to uncover. In our next video on screen, we'll dive even deeper into jaw-dropping cases and shocking sentences that stunned the world.